Hey everybody, welcome to Monday. Sorry about the bright, smudgy lips. I was shooting boss fight stuff over the weekend. It was a long weekend with boss fight stuff. Much work. Getting in the home stretch of the first episode. The Kickstarter patrons and, the Kickstarter backers will get their name on set video this week. It's going to go out. Yay. So they'll get to see that. And if you want other boss fight previews, you still can get them by becoming a Patreon backer. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron. Patreon.com/YNK. I gotta refresh that graphic. That's the old lady bit stuff. Gotta do the boss fight stuff. But that's not, hey Momo, that's not what I'm talking about today. Today I'm talking about an experience I had over the weekend that made me think, wow, the depths of just how wrong the general public and, the anti-gaming media have got gaming, because some of you may know that they didn't pass a law, they changed the regulation in the 90s after the L'École Polytechnique shooting, which was up until the recent shooting in Nova Scotia, the worst mass shooting in Canadian history. I think it was a whopping 18 people. Which is a lot of people by our standards, but by American standards, like, really? That's a baby mass shooting. It's awful to compare that way, right? So they made the laws so that the government could change regulations without a full act of parliament. Now, governments have been cautious in using that, obviously, because it's extremely unpopular. But because of COVID-19, the official opposition, the conservative parties, won't let the government, with the limited parliament that the conservatives insisted on, instead of doing it virtually so that all, 338 members can attend if they so choose, they won't allow any non-COVID-19 business to happen. So after the shootings in Nova Scotia, where I don't know if it's 23 or 24, sitting at 23, 24 people died, they changed the regulations and have now banned pretty much any semi-automatic weapon that any model is built to resemble an assault class rifle. So, with the, what is it, the M4? I don't remember if that's the Ruger Mini 14 or the AR-15 is designed to look like, the M16 and that sort of thing. But, obviously the big difference is that it doesn't full auto and burst fire. It's a semi-automatic weapon. Now, obviously, mods and stuff like that, it's not that hard to adapt, but it's very different up here in Canada than it is in the US. We have no Second Amendment, so there's no thing to fall back on there. The government has the absolute right to regulate guns of any kind. No one's under any impression that this will stop handgun murders, because handguns are banned. If somebody really wants to get their hands on an illegal firearm, they still can. Nobody's under any, false impressions in that regard. What we've found it will do is stop situations of intimate partner violence from escalating into somebody getting shot because of a mix of alcohol and a semi-automatic weapon and anger or hurt or whatever. That is a fairly major problem in rural Canada, in multiple provinces. So that's what it's really designed to take care of, to do something about, which I think is a good thing, and the other thing it's designed to do is to cut down on the number of people a single person can kill quickly, right? But as I was talking to people about it, most people were actually pretty decent. There were only a few people who were raving, slavering, completely unreasonable. Most people, even if they didn't support the changes, they were decent about it. But a bunch of us got into a discussion about the fact that we like guns. I enjoy, God, one of my favorite shows is Forged in Fire. I love those, those shows where they show like experimental military weaponry, like near future weapons and like prototype weapons. And it's just like, bazookas that can be fired inside buildings and stuff like that. I just think that stuff's super cool. And I wouldn't be opposed in going to one of those ranges in Vegas where you can you can pay for the ammo and rent an automatic weapon and shoot that or whatever. I am not opposed to that, but I never own any of those guns. I'd rather play video games and play stuff like Rainbow Six or Ghost Recon or Call of Duty, and I can have all the weapons, and that made me realize, man, imagine how many other people could have that experience if video games weren't so demonized. We can learn about the guns, we can learn about the different things, we can actually learn the difference between a fully automatic weapon with burst fire and semi-auto settings, as opposed to a semi-automatic weapon. Like, these are all things that gamers that play shooters know about, right? Because we're exposed to it. It's an education in the different types of guns and what they do and what the different sites do, all that stuff, which I think really would make both sides of the gun, sort of the gun safety argument, more educated. If everybody involved played video games, which are totally safe, if somebody steals your video game, they can't use it to go kill somebody, right? The way if somebody steals your gun, they can. And I really think that if people if there wasn't such a negative association with video games, people, like I said, on both sides of the whole thing, people who are very, very pro-gun control, people who are very, very anti-gun control, they could have the same vocabulary, because somebody who doesn't have as much exposure to guns can sit down and learn about all the different things and what they do in a safe way. And because I admit, one of the things that really, really bugs me about all these debates about guns is when they call like Ruger Mini 14s and AR-15s assault style weapons. I think that's especially unfair to the Ruger because the ranch model looks like a hunting rifle. Like, it's the tactical one that's made to look like an assault weapon that people use in the military. And to be clear, I don't believe anybody outside the military needs these weapons. I am not a big believer in we need guns to protect ourselves from the government, because the truth is, corrupt governments don't, take people out anymore. They just use the internet and things like that to just ruin someone's reputation. It's more effective to ruin someone's good name than to make them a martyr or have them just disappear. A lot fewer questions are asked. And so I'm not a believer in that for that reason. I understand some people feel very strongly about it. But, one of the things that video games have taught me are guns are tools, right? You can use them to save people. You can use them to harm people. And, I had this whole discussion with my friend who is very, I had no idea she knew so much about real life firearms. I knew her family owned guns, but I didn't know she knew so much about it. And I was able to have a really, really back and forth clear. I could follow it because of video games. And I think that's, I think that's an important part of the dialogue, which could allow, especially people, on the left who are very pro-gun control, but everybody to be more educated about what these weapons do and what their proper use is. You know, the different types of ammo even, and the different calibers of bullets, and what they do. This is all a really, really important bit of being able to have discussions about this stuff. I do agree with the sort of I'll say pro-gun freedom. I won't say pro and anti. I'll say, pro-gun control versus pro-gun freedom. Hello, Momo. I do see the point that people debating this issue should know something about guns, and they should use the correct terms to describe them and all that stuff. That's a fair point. You can do that through video games. But, of course, the various people who are very, very, very solidly pro-gun control also tend to be anti-video game. And this is when I start going, okay, say you have a kid really interested in military culture, really interested in firearm culture and the different guns, because let's face it, they're cool pieces of machinery. Which would you rather they do? Play video games to scratch that itch? Or muck around with real life firearms that could shoot them or someone else? And I mean, one of the things I'm happy about with the whole COVID-19 coronavirus thing is that I know quite a few parents who admit they were very anti-video games before this, but now, oh man, it's kept the peace in their households. And this makes me really happy, because that means that it's one step towards normalization, right? They've tried it. The kids binged on video games for a bunch of weeks. The sky didn't fall. Their kids didn't go crazy. They didn't start acting out. That's one step. Now as their kids get older, I'll be glad when it sort of hits the point where the kids start playing more mature video games and they don't, they don't turn into delinquents then either. That's all I want to say about this now. I am going to do some Last of Us 2 leak updates tomorrow, because there was new developments over the weekend. Oh boy, but I need time to collect my thoughts. I have been going on boss fight this weekend. So if you like this sort of thing, even though I am frazzled and a hot mess, and I mean, you like Momo no matter what, right? Momo's the best. Help support this channel. Become a monthly patron, patreon.com/LeannaK. Countdown to boss fight. Soon.